Hi folks, it's me again. Today we're going to be talking about three different concepts, and they are civic journalism, citizen journalism, and community journalism. Now, they all actually have a common tie, and that is community, but the way they focus on building community and connecting journalism to local communities is a bit different in their emphasis and how they actually operate. So that's the presentation for today. So today we're going to be talking about journalism for the people, by the people. That is civic journalism, citizen journalism, and community journalism. These are concepts and types of journalism that are all connected, but also all different in terms of the specific way they operate. So we'll start off by talking about civic journalism. And this is an idea that really was in vogue in the 90s. It's slightly less in fashion these days, but certainly some of the principles and guiding ideas of civic journalism are still very much in the mix of industry practice and conversations that are being held about how to do journalism that serves people on a local level. And so civic journalism envisions news organizations as taking a more active role in the democratic process. And this contrasts the traditional view where journalism is more detached and news organizations simply inform an audience that can then decide what they want to do with that information. Civic journalism doesn't generally suggest that news organizations should take a particular position on any given news topic, but rather that these journalism outlets create and foster opportunities for various members of the community to come together and have constructive discussions about whatever the news issue may be. And so civic journalism envisions all members of a community as participants rather than spectators in a democracy, bringing together policymakers and the journalists and the citizens so that everyone comes together and shares in this conversation and has a voice in trying to collectively suss out, understand the topics that are facing the community, and then how to best address those challenges. As I said, civic journalism was really in its heyday in the 90s, and two scholars by the name of J. Rose and Davis Merritt developed the idea of what they called at that time public journalism, but the ideas were really, the term is really synonymous with civic journalism. The ideas were the same. And again, journalists engage the audience, they facilitate debate, and so they might hold town forums to bring all of these members of the community together, or public debates, right, where different interested parties in the community could come together and have their say about things and publicly, respectfully debate specific issues. Civic journalism might also include a news organization polling the public for what issues they're concerned about. So instead of just taking a very insular and inward approach to making decisions on news content and what a newspaper is going to cover, in civic journalism, news organizations reach out to their audience to say, what do you want to talk about? What do you want to have covered in your community? What are we not telling you about? What are we not addressing in our publication that is of concern and importance to you? So moving on then to look at citizen journalism, again, this deals with news at a very local level, but in this case, it's journalism that's done by members of the community, oftentimes non-professional journalists, people that don't have any kind of background or training in journalism. Sometimes this is called grassroots media or the people's media or participatory media, but it's where everyday citizens take the reins in covering news events or news topics. They play an active role in creating journalistic content. Nowadays, with mobile phones, obviously it's very easy for citizens to create their own journalism by filming news events, breaking news events, or various scheduled events that might be going on in the community. Citizens can record or take pictures of these things and then either post them directly themselves on the web, say through a blog, or they can share it with a professional news organization. And so we have things like CNN's iReport, or other similar projects from professional news organizations where they receive content from everyday citizens to add to the material that they're producing and putting out there by their professional staff as well. Sometimes people also refer to this as crowdsourcing of journalistic content, where news organizations will solicit content and coverage from people that were in the crowd, right? People that were there at an event, or people who have written or covered a particular news topic, so that they can add that again to professional content. But the key again with citizen journalism is that it's produced by everyday people. Professor Mary Rose Papandrea points out that the freedom of the press, this idea that we have, this ideal of the freedom of the press, used to refer literally to a legal freedom to publish using a printing press. And so this idea of citizen journalism has really been inherent to the ideals of our First Amendment ever since colonial times and even before. One of the earliest modern examples of citizen journalism was the indie media movement, which got started in 1999. People in Seattle were protesting the World Trade Organization, and they wanted media attention beyond just getting arrested, so they decided to start covering things that were going on there at the protests from their own perspective and putting it up on the web at the indie media site. Digital media, of course, now has fueled citizen journalism in a way that previously was just impossible at this level. Citizen journalism has been around for a long time in the form of small underground newspapers, what was called zines, which were homemade, very small circulation magazines. But digital media now, where the overhead and the hurdles for content producers to have to jump over, those are much lower now. Anyone with a internet connection and a basic use of computer software and an interest to do journalism can do it now from their laptop or wherever it is that they're doing the work. So digital media has really fueled the citizen journalism movement. Now, of course, with this amazing democratizing potential of digital media and of citizen journalism, there have also been criticisms, and that some of those are that the objectivity that professional journalists generally strive for, and we talked about that in one of our previous lecture videos, but that citizen journalists may not necessarily hold to that same norm and principle of objectivity as a process. They may be much more inclined to cover and produce content from a very opinionated and slanted perspective. Some have pointed to or argued that the quality of journalism can suffer when it's being done by quote-unquote amateurs, people that have not been professionally trained. And there's also a matter of legal accountability involved in that when professional journalists publish information or broadcast information, they realize that there is a potential for them to be held accountable for any information that might be libelous or slanderous, any information that might defame someone that they're covering, and citizen journalists may not always hold or understand that liability as well, and so they may not understand the legal accountability that comes along with publishing journalism information. And lastly, we have community journalism, or the current buzzword in the field is hyperlocal journalism. And this is content that focuses on neighborhoods or small towns or, say, suburban communities instead of larger metropolitan areas. So if you think about, for example, say, covering the community of Hyde Park versus covering all of Tampa or all of Tampa Bay, that's sort of the difference between community journalism and, say, daily newspapering at a metropolitan newspaper. So community journalism might include stories about civic club activities, what the local junior league or Rotary Club is doing, events that they might be holding, or scholarships that they might be sponsoring. High school sports, right? The local high school basketball game or volleyball game or whatever it might be. Or very specific local zoning issues, so whether or not a neighborhood is going to get speed bumps, right, on their streets. Church activities, summer camps, right? All of these things would be hyperlocal or community journalism. But this is really news about your neighbors and news for a very local community audience. It's the mom and pop diner that everybody knows about. It's the news that's going on in your backyard, right? The local coffee shop downtown, right? So this is again in contrast to the news that we would get certainly on a national or international level, but even on more of a broader metropolitan scale. Community journalism really focuses on the life that we live on an immediate local level.